What is up, everybody? I'm back. Took a little break. Took a little month break. More like 4 month break. I'm back though. Coming back with a mock draft. Never really done one of these before, but I did the research. I laid my list out. I looked at the fits, positional value, stuff like that, GMs, how they usually draft. And this is my take on the mock draft and who I think people are going to fall, how things are going to fall, but we'll have to see. I mean, the draft is so unpredictable. No mock draft is going to be right. And if it is, I mean, credit to you. But starting off with Tennessee at number 1, I know they have Will Levis. Do you give him another year? Do you go Abdul Carter? I know that's the favorite pick right now. But at the end of the day, quarterback's the most important position. It's, that's the driving force behind any football team. You look at all the great quarterbacks in the NFL. They win their team games. And I think you need a quarterback to win in this league. With that being said, which one do you go? Is it Shedeur? Is it Cam Ward? I think if you're going to take one at one, it's one of these two guys. And I just like Cam Ward more. I think he has a higher ceiling. Not saying that he's the better prospect coming out. I don't think he's as polished as maybe Shedeur Sanders is, but I think the ceiling, something that you have there, there's just more potential with a Cam Ward than there's a Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur's arm talent holds him back. And I just like Cam Ward overall more as a prospect coming out than I do Shedeur. Shedeur, is a kind of a high floor, low ceiling. Cam Ward, more of a project, but higher ceiling if you put in the work. So next up we got Cleveland. Same situation as Tennessee with their quarterback, Deshaun Watson. Not the guy at all. I mean, holy, that's a whole different situation. But I don't know that you take a quarterback in this draft. I mean, are you confident in Shedeur running your offense if you're Kevin Stefanski? I mean, you got Myles Garrett requesting a trade out of Cleveland, basically saying he's done there. And with that, I'm going Abdul Carter just because of the possibility that you're about to lose your best player, maybe in franchise history, obviously outside of Jim Brown, of course, but he's up there as one of the best Cleveland Browns. So I'm going Abdul Carter. Gives you flexibility, and if Myles Garrett stays, I mean, what a duo that is, So Abdul Carter, I think, is also another really high potential guy. He's already great coming out, great with his hands, great pass rusher. I mean, you've seen what he did against Ohio State, and it was reported that he was injured that game. So a healthy Abdul Carter, look out. New York, also QB needy team. And Dable, they need to win now if they want to keep their jobs. So how do you do that? You draft a quarterback, and that's going to be Shedeur Sanders. While I don't necessarily think Shedeur should go this high, we know how teams are with quarterbacks. I mean, Will Levis was a first-round guy. So, I mean, if a QB is on the board, teams will take a QB if needed. For that reason, I think Shedeur, perfect fit for New York, actually. Malik Neighbors, he's coming into a not-so-bad situation, really. Offensive line needs work, but there's a lot of great offensive tackles, interior linemen in this draft. So I think you can address that later down the board. And here we go with New England on the clock. As much as I want to take Travis Hunter as a Patriots fan, we've seen what Drake May can do with time and what he can do with that offensive receiving core, even though it's not the best. I think we can address receiver in free agency. I think there's more available options in free agency for receivers than for the position we're about to take, and that'll be Will Campbell, tackle out of LSU. I think he can move to guard. I don't know if he's a true tackle. I know there's a lot of concerns about his size, but if he does stick and play tackle, guard, whatever it is, you just need some sort of help for Drake May, because we've seen him elevate receivers' play on New England. So I just think that's a really good pick with, especially with Mike Vrabel coming in. He just wants to rebuild the trenches. Mike Vrabel is a trenches guy, and I like that pick a lot. So now, speaking of Travis Hunter, That's who I have going to Jacksonville. You know, you got to get Trevor Lawrence more weapons, you know, on the offensive side of the ball. Plus, we all know what he can do defensively. And I think it helps both needs that they actually need. Because, I mean, what, you're going to ride with Christian Kirk as your wide receiver 2? I don't think so. Travis Hunter's a big play machine waiting to happen. Highlight reel player. I think it just fits a lot. He can play both sides. Not a lot of players can do that. Now, will he play both sides full time in the NFL? I mean, I highly doubt it. Highly doubt it. But he says he wants to. I just don't know how plausible that really is. We'll have to see. He is going into the scouting combine as a corner. Probably to help his draft stock, if anything, but we'll see what goes on with that. Next up, Las Vegas. Now, this is also another QB needy team. If I was doing trades, I'd probably have them trading up, you know, maybe with New England or try to get ahead in New York, get a QB. But in this one, QBs are gone. So what do you look for next? I think with, you know, free agency, you have a lot of options you could do to fill QB. I know the big favorite right now is Aaron Rodgers. So why not get him a weapon? Outside guy, Teteroa McMillan out of Arizona. I think that fits the Raiders' offensive, you know, scheme pretty well. They need a big guy that can go outside. Jacoby Myers is not a true number 1. He's a slot guy. You need to get somebody on the other side of the ball with him. Plus with Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers, that offense with the right quarterback is deadly. So, you know, that little piece you're missing can just push it over the hump. Look what the Falcons did. You know, they didn't address quarterback necessarily for about 2 years, taking Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts 1 year, Drake London, and they just need that QB. So I think the Raiders are in a similar spot with that kind of thing. You can get somebody in free agency, trade, whatever it may be. Just build your offense for when you do get that guy. They're in a great situation. And I think this, you know, helps that cause the most. New York. Now, there's a lot of ways you can go with this. Tight end, you know, Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland, great options. Because, I mean, I don't really know if you like Jack Conklin that much. Mason Graham's here. Malachi Starks could be good on the defensive side. Luther Burden. But I'm going to go Mason Graham. I think him and Quinnen Williams would be very dominant in the trenches. And trenches can win games. I mean, look what the Eagles did to the Chiefs. Literally in the biggest game of the year. Trenches win games. Mason Graham's a great pass rusher. It's also pretty good decent against the run, but, you know, all around great player. He has a high ceiling. Also, you know, he's probably coming out better than a lot of these other prospects are. I think he's a more impactful player at the start. So, yeah, Mason Graham. Next up, Carolina on the clock. I think they need a lot of defensive help. I think they need to address wide receiver. But which is more value, you know, edge rusher or wide receiver? I think it's edge rusher. With that being said, I'm going to go James Pierce Jr. Really, really good guy off of the edge. Great hands, great speed, good power. And I think he gives that Carolina defense some juice. I was thinking of wide receiver here, but I think just it comes down to positional value, and edge rusher is just more valuable in the NFL than a wide receiver is. So James Pierce Jr., I think will be a great fit for Carolina. Another team that needs to rebuild their trenches, the New Orleans Saints. And I think with Cam Jordan getting older, how much longer is he going to play, you know? With that being said, I think Mike Green, great fit there. Back-to-back edge players off the board. Trenches are just so important, especially nowadays. And having a good defensive line that can really turn the tide of a game, very important now more than ever. Next up, we got Chicago, and man, this team now hiring Ben Johnson, scary team. Look out. I think you need to protect Caleb Williams. I think you absolutely need to. I think it has to be the number one priority. Rebuild that offensive line. And I think Kelvin Banks Jr., great fit there. You know, you got to get Caleb some help on the offensive line. You can't have him running for his life. every game. Yes, he has the so-called magic to make plays happen, but it can't be on a down-to-down basis. He has to be able to stand in the pocket and, make on-script throws. He just hasn't been able to do that this year. Speaking of offensive linemen, the 49ers are a team with a very aging offensive tackle with Trent Williams, and I think they need to replenish that position now. So that for that reason, I'm going to go Josh Simmons. I think with Trent Williams getting older, you might as well replace him now while you can before it's too late. And this is a great tackle class. I mean, really, any of these guys are first-rounders. Ahmed Membu, Gray Zabel, Josh Connerly, they're all going to go in the first round. So you might as well just pick the best one and go with it. Next up, America's team on the board here. I mean, come on. Ashton Jeanty. They need a running back bad. Their running game was hysterically bad this year. They need to get some juice in that offense. Can't just all be CeeDee Lamb. I think Ashton Jeanty fixes that problem that the Cowboys have. Moving on here to Miami. There's so many players that I could have went here. Like Will Johnson. I think Kenneth Grant could have been a good pick here. Luther Burden could have helped with Tyreek getting older, but I think at the end of the day, I'm still stick with what I had, Malachi Starks. I mean, this dude can play over the top of the ball, back end, real, true cover safety. He could play up to the line of scrimmage. Think of a Kyle Hamilton kind of role with the Baltimore Ravens. I think you need a Swiss Army knife on that defense. And, I mean, that's what Malachi Starks is. He's a Swiss Army knife. He can blitz, cover, great man-to-man, great zone over the top. And they just need help on defense more than ever. Jalen Ramsey is not going to play forever. You need somebody in that secondary. I just think scheme-wise it makes a lot of sense. Now, Indianapolis. This is an interesting one here. You got Anthony Richardson. Hasn't really been up to the potential you'd like him to be. But at the same time, what does he really have for help? Michael Pittman. They just got Josh Downs. They have a good running game. I think a tight end in this system, especially with Shane Steichen, who was Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator, with Jalen Hurts. I think Tyler Warren here makes a lot of sense. You need a big tight end, big receiving tight end in this offense. Get more dynamic playmakers. Tyler Warren fills that void pretty well. You have to fully bring AR to his full capabilities. Talent-wise surrounding him to see if he's your guy. I think he's such a high ceiling. It's almost laughable how he hasn't hit it. And I know he was a project, but, ceiling is top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Cam Newton. I know not Cam Newton exactly, but pretty damn close. I think Tyler Warren could bring AR's game up. He needs a safety valve guy. I just think that, especially with Shane Steichen, you got a lot more options offensively to dial up some different plays here. And I just think that, that's a great fit. Number 15, the Atlanta Falcons are next. Now, this dude that I have them taking has fallen down the board from maybe where you usually would expect him to go. I just think, the way that the board's falling, I'm not going to force him to go to any of these teams because necessarily he hasn't needed to be going to any of these teams. And that's Will Johnson. We've seen players like this fall before. Look at the 2023 draft when Christian Gonzalez fell to New England at 17 when he was, reportedly CB1 coming out of the draft. Players like this fall. And I have him falling right into the Falcons' lap. I think he's a great fit for that defense. Get A.J. Terrell, someone else that can help him, cover on the other side of the sideline. He's a boundary guy. Great speed. Injuries may be a little concerning, but realistically, I don't think that's going to play a factor. I like the upside with Will Johnson. Great ball hawk, great man, shutdown guy. And, him and A.J. Terrell, great duo. I think Atlanta desperately needs another boundary guy. I don't think the players they have right now will make do. So adding someone like this into your defense, I think, just makes it more versatile, more things you could do. And I mean, who wouldn't want, a player like Will Johnson to add to their defense? I mean, he just fell all the way to 15. And, luckily for Atlanta, he's there. Next up, we have Arizona. I think they also need somebody on the defensive side of the ball. Not necessarily corner, but someone that plays defensive line. I'm going to go Kenneth Grant. I think, you look at the Cardinals' defensive line, they don't really have a lot of, pass rush talent there. I think they need someone in the interior that can help run and pass. And I think Kenneth Grant, big dude, big guy, great with hands, exceptional power. I mean, for his size, good speed too. And, just somebody like this isn't in every draft. And I just think you got to, capitalize on it while you can. The trend of defensive guys coming off the board here, Cincinnati is a team that really needs defensive help. Like, yeah, Arizona needed it. Atlanta needed it. Cincinnati desperately needs it. If it wasn't for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, this team, I don't think, cracks 5 wins. So you got to get a defensive, difference maker on the other side of the ball. And you need another pass rusher. I just think that's what it is. I think Mykel Williams here out of Georgia is a great addition to this defense. Someone opposite of Trey Hendrickson. Add him with Sam Hubbard. That defensive line can really cause some damage to opposing offensive lines. I think he's great, raw physical talent. He's one of the best players in this draft, period. I really like his pass rushing ability. And Cincinnati needs to do something quick. And while I think they could also address secondary with, Jahdae Barrett sitting here, Siobhan Revel, I think pass rushing is just the more positional value than over a DB. And I think Mykel Williams, is instant difference maker for that defense. Seattle at 18 here. I think I'm going to go edge once again. And I think that's going to be Shamar Stewart. I think that the Seahawks defense under Donald's going to lean towards defense. I mean, this team is borderline playoff team as it is. And I also think they could go wide receiver. I think Luther Burden, definitely an option. Tyler Lockett. I mean, how much longer is he going to play, You look at guys like Emeka Ibuka. I mean, I guess Matthew Golden. Great option there. But I just think, with the defensive-minded head coach they have, this is the most likely option. I also like this for, the defensive side of the ball. Because defense wins championships. You look at that Seattle offense, wasn't really anything special. They still went 10-7. Geno, had a Geno-type year. And I just think you keep building on that great defense. Tampa Bay, now at 19. I think we're going to go with the first off-ball linebacker here in Jahad Campbell. I think he's the best off-ball linebacker in the draft. He's, he could be your Levante David replacement. He's not going to play forever. He's going to be out of there soon. You need to reinforce this position now. And, Jahad Campbell learning under him for the time he's still there could, definitely boost up his game so when Levante David does go. Broncos at 20. I am going to go Luther Burden with this pick. Talked about it with, maybe does he go to Seattle. I'm going to go to Denver here. You already got that jump ball guy with Cortland Sutton. And, you can add somebody who can take the top off of the defense. I think Luther Burden, perfect fit. Good run after the catch. Great route runner. I think he'll complement Cortland Sutton's game fairly well. Got to get Bo Nix more weapons. I could also see them going with Michigan's Colston Loveland. I know Sean Payton, loves tight ends with his time in New Orleans. Think of, Jimmy Graham, that kind of role there. But I think Luther Burden to add to that wide receiver room would help them very, very, very hugely in a very depleted wide receiver room. Outside of Cortland Sutton, they really don't have, another guy. And I mean Marvin Mims, I guess, but you need a true number two, and I think that's what Luther Burden can bring to the table. I was gonna have Luther Burden go to Pittsburgh, however, he just got picked. So what does Pittsburgh do? I think they go with the other great wide receiver option here, Emeka Ibuka. Same situation kind of there with Denver. You need another wide receiver too across from Pickens, because outside of Pickens, they don't really have the talent. You've got number 3 guys playing as the number 2s, and you need that other guy, and Emeka Ibuka is definitely that other guy. Pick 22, Jim Harbaugh loves tight ends, loves running the ball. Colson Loveland, match made in heaven. This doesn't really need an explanation. Justin Herbert needs another option besides Quentin Johnston, who forgets he's an NFL receiver at times, apparently. And Jim Harbaugh getting his guy from Michigan, I think this pick is just way too perfect to not send him here. And I think he'd be really fun in a Jim Harbaugh offense. So, perfect fit. Bay at 23. Now, this pick was interesting because, another team that you could really go any direction. But I think the main thing for Green Bay is they're probably losing Jair Alexander in free agency. Not even losing. I think they're just going to straight up release him. Always injured. Hasn't really been on the field in the last 2 years. When he's on the field, great player, but he never on the field. So with that, I think I'm going to go Jahdae Barron out of Texas. Is he that Jair, boundary guy with the size? No. Great slot guy, though. Green Bay, youngest team in the league. He's got time to develop. I think he can play outside. I think he played good outside when he did. This would be the perfect replacement for Jair if he were to leave. This is, banking on them releasing him. I just think that's what's most likely going to happen. He's up there in age. Doesn't ever really play. I just think it's time to move on if you're Green Bay and, get someone newer, fresher on a rookie scale contract. And Jahdae Barron, I think, perfect fit for that defense. And, does losing Jair Alexander hurt? Yeah, but it's a good place to start. Minnesota on the clock, 24. I wanted to take Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina just because of the fact of, Aaron Jones up there in age. So I was thinking of taking Omarion Hampton. However, the pick I did have them taking was Tyler Booker, the guard from Bama. I just think, it just all comes down to positional value. Omarion Hampton, I doubt will go to, any of these teams down the board here. So, you can pick him up in the second round, trade up top of the second round and get him. So why not address the offensive line while you can? Tyler Booker to Minnesota. Get that offensive line bolstered up. Houston at 25. Now, this team is going to be very wide receiver needed. And you're probably thinking, no, they're not. They have Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, blah, blah, blah. However, Tank Dell, injured. Probably not even playing the 25 season. Diggs, are you really going to re-sign him? He's way old. I don't think he's even going to sign back, even if they offered. So, wide receiver is definitely on the board here. And that's who I have him taken, is a wide receiver, Matthew Golden, out of Texas. True speed guy, true, take the top off of a defense. Think of a Xavier Worthy. I think he'll fit really well with, Stroud's want to throw the deep ball. I think they really need another receiver, at least until Tank Dell comes back, because, Matthew Golden can move down to the slot guy, which I think is more of his natural role anyway. So, for now, this definitely makes sense. It'll make sense when Tank Dell comes back. You're younger at receiver, and, you're just so thin at the area. You need to address it. speaking of teams with thin positional, depth, LA, I have them taking Benjamin Morrison. Great corner. Hasn't really been on the field his last season. Injuries are a concern. I've already talked about it earlier. I don't necessarily believe injuries will be a problem for a lot of these guys coming out. You need another dude to play, nickel, whether it's boundary, whatever it is. Trey White, not the long-term guy. Benjamin Morrison just makes a lot of sense. Good scheme fit. Great, shutdown kind of guy. I almost had him at CB1, but I know how these teams are going to look at people with the injury problems, so that's why he falls down to 26. But, still a great pick. Great player. Now, Baltimore, I think they need offensive line help. They don't really need, a receiver. Not in the first round anyway. I think you can address that later down the board. So, I have them taking Armand Membu. I think that's a great addition to that offensive line. Something they desperately need. And, I know Lamar makes these crazy highlight plays all the time, but not a good look for the offensive line if you're Baltimore. Detroit, on the clock. I have them taking a corner, something they also desperately need help with. That'll be Shavon Revel out of East Carolina. Losing Aiden Hutchinson definitely hurt the team, but even if he were to stay healthy, I don't think the defense would have improved that much. I think you need someone else in that secondary. Last year, I thought they were going to take 23 draft, but went a different direction. I think this year, get somebody else in that secondary for you. At 29, another team that needs defensive help. They absolutely got blown out in the NFC Championship game. Washington, I think, is going to go edge, if I can find it. And I like Nick Scorton here. You don't really have a lot of people in the pass rush department on that line, on the edge especially. I think Nick Scorton, I think I could also see them going with Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State. I think, anything on the defensive side here works for me. I just ended up picking Nick Scorton because I think edge rusher, turns the tides of a game. Positional value, theme of this video. And, that defense needs some sort of juice. They have Bobby Wagner, veteran. They just kind of have veteran guys here and there. I could also see them going with, a safety, anything in the secondary. I'm open to that. But here in the first round, I think you got to address edge, and Nick Scorton, boom. Buffalo on the clock, I think another team that desperately needs, some kind of juice on that defense. And I am going to go with Jalen Walker. He is an on-ball pass rushing guy, unlike, Jahad Campbell, who went to Tampa Bay in this, who's off-ball cover guy. Jalen Walker is a pass rushing guy. I like this for, many reasons. I think they need edge pass rush, especially. I think the interior is fine. Secondary could use work. But, pass rush controls a game. Last two picks, here we go. Kansas City, the Super Bowl losers. Josh Connerly Jr. We all seen what Mahomes did in the Super Bowl. No offensive line help. They're going to be losing Trey Smith. Josh Connerly, get somebody on that tackle side, protect Mahomes' blind side. And, this is not going to be the last we see of the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, I'm sure. So, you're going to be losing maybe Travis Kelce too. But how confident are you in, Gunnar Helm or Elijah Arroyo? Not much. So Josh Connerly just makes a lot of sense here. Mahomes running for his life, and can't have that. Philadelphia, last pick of this first round. I have them taking, if I could find it, I want it to be a surprise. Where is he at? Is he a linebacker? Is that what it is? Is he listed as a linebacker? Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. You know, I think Philadelphia loves to build in the trenches. I think they love to bolster up defense. I think they, want to control the game at the line of scrimmage. Very evident of the Super Bowl. And that rounds off the first round of my mock draft. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know anything you do differently. Hoping to post more again, but we'll see how that goes. All right, see you. Subscribe.